Welcome into Between the Tackles. It is week 4. I am your host, Michaela Vernava, joined by our Patriots analyst, Doug Kyed, and also our other Patriots analyst, Zack Cox. It's Zach's debut on Between the Tackles. Zach, how you feel?
I'm honored.
Yeah?
It's a big step. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, we're welcoming you into the circle of Patriots trust here. Welcome.
Yep.
Happy to have ya. Guys, tons going on, of course, still down at Gillette Stadium. Jacoby Brissett and Jimmy Garoppolo both out at practice. What's the word?
There is no word right now. We'll just kind of have to wait and see on this one. Probably until, who knows? I mean, word might come down on Saturday at some point. But yeah, Garoppolo's still got the shoulder. Brissett's still got the thumb. Julian Edelman's still the emergency, and it's pretty much the same as last week at this point.
Yeah, the latest reports that we've heard are that they expect to have at least one of them ready to play, which obviously doesn't really tell us a whole lot because we kind of assumed that. I mean, it would have been very surprising if they have Julian Edelman going in this game. And every report indication we've heard this week is that they're not even working out any other free agent veterans. So they sound like they're very confident that they'll have at least one of their two quarterbacks ready to go. Who that is kind of anybody's guess at this point.
Yeah, I feel like Jimmy Garoppolo will be ready to go, but I mean, hey, who am I? But one thing, my producer inside, Mark DiBenedetto, right before we came out here to record this, actually, he called me over and he was like, "Hey, Michaela, check this out." He pulled up our USA Today Sports Images account, and he was looking at a bunch of pictures of post-game after the Texans game, and looking at Brissett high-fiving guys with his right hand, smacking guys' helmets. It kind of didn't really look like a whole lot was wrong. I remember during the game broadcast, I do remember they showed trainers checking out his hand, but it was very brief. They really didn't say much and just moved on. But yeah, it didn't really look like much. He was in a lot of pain while he was high-fiving guys.
Yeah, I mean, even in the game, too, I've rewatched the play that it reportedly happened on was when he got fallen on by Vince Wilfork, which obviously can't be the greatest feeling, a guy of Vince's stature falling on you. But you see, even after that play, he used his right hand, his injured right hand, to push himself off the football. And then, yeah, like you said, after the game, doing the whole high-five handshake thing. And we even saw him in the locker room. I mean, it's obviously not a big thing, but he was texting with his injured right thumb, and it doesn't seem. I mean, you need a little bit.
That is kind of a big deal.
Little bit of dexterity for that.
Yeah,
so.
My thumb gets sore if I text too much. You know what I mean? It takes a lot of.
I think this is kind of much ado about nothing, personally. I mean, he obviously did injure his thumb. It was being looked at on the sideline. There was the report that it was a torn ligament. I don't know. I mean, the thumb was kind of bleeding on the sideline. Seems like he just kind of landed on it, and I'm sure that throwing a football with a hurt thumb isn't a big deal, but this seems like a little bit more of a hurt situation rather than an injured situation.
When you say it was bleeding, when I mentioned during the broadcast that they showed them checking out his thumb, they actually just said, "Oh, I think that's a hangnail," and moved on. Literally, that was what they said.
It's a torn hangnail.
Those do hurt. Those do hurt. Gotta get a good Manny. But guys, do you think that maybe the Patriots, I mean, I know that they don't usually give a lot of details, a lot of information on anything, especially injuries, but do you think that, say if this report is kind of a lot to do over nothing, they're not shooting it down and really putting it to rest for once and for all because they're kind of using it to their advantage, that uncertainty at quarterback, and preparing for the Bills and leaving them with some questions?
Yeah, I could see that a little bit. I think they have, not publicly, but through reports, shot it down a little bit, just in saying they do expect to have one of these guys in there. After the initial report, there are other reports that said that it's not very serious, that it probably won't require surgery, all of that. So yeah, I think they're using a little bit of that to their advantage so that the Bills have to prepare for multiple quarterbacks and spend equal time on multiple quarterbacks. But I think their concern is probably much more with Garoppolo and whether he can go rather than Brissett, because obviously this team's a lot different when Garoppolo's at quarterback.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, you saw their game plan against the Texans was pretty starkly different than what you usually see from any NFL team. I mean, they ran a lot of kind of read option, design quarterback run, almost like some old school high school offense at some point. A lot of LeGarrette Blount, which I think you're going to see with either quarterback. But yeah, I mean, back to your point there, I don't think they hate that there's like quarterback questions right now. I mean, it doesn't really benefit the Patriots in any way to publicly come out and be like, no, Rex Ryan, like this is who is going to be playing quarterback for us this weekend. I mean, I'm sure they have a better grasp on it than us in the public and even us in the media. But yeah, I think he's fine with making the Bills think a little bit.
Let's touch on Brissett's performance too. I know they played Thursday night, which at this point feels like a millennia ago, but we haven't gotten a chance to talk about it. I was freaking out just as a fan of the game of football when he made that, dove into the pylon, looked like Cam Newton. That running touchdown was pretty sweet, but overall he was 11 of 19, 103 yards. Good, but not fantastic. But is that really surprising?
No, I mean, I think from watching the game, it looked like he did better than his stat line would indicate. I mean, I think with what he was asked to do, he did pretty well. I mean, obviously he did well enough to win 27-0. He wasn't perfect. He did make a couple bad throws. He had one that probably should have been intercepted. He had a couple that he overthrew Chris Hogan on what could have been a touchdown deep. He still needs to work on that deep ball. He doesn't really have the touch on that yet. But all the underneath stuff, all the screens, all the handoffs, the design runs, I mean, he did exactly what they needed him to do, which admittedly wasn't much, but hey, I mean, it was enough to win.
Yeah, I thought he was good for a rookie, but immediately after the game, I forgot who it was, but someone asked me, like, okay, after that game, who are the players who were actually down in this game? Which players actually struggled for the Patriots? And even though I included him in my top 6 players in the game for the Patriots, Brissett was one of the worst Patriots in that game. And that's not an insult to him. I don't mean any offense to him about that because he is a rookie quarterback, but he missed on a lot of deep balls. Obviously, his running ability was really good, but he wasn't great at quarterback. If they had Garoppolo in there, they could have won probably 45-0. I thought that I thought that Brissett was fine. I thought that it was definitely an impressive performance for a rookie, but definitely has to work on the touch on those deep balls, and there are certainly things that could have been better out of him. But overall, for an NFL debut, coming into the league as a third stringer, overall impressive.
I mean, as we've said all week too, props to Josh McDaniels for this game plan. I mean, he took a guy who does still have a limited skill set in Brissett, and he made him. He designed an offense that Brissett could run, that didn't ask him to do too much, that really played to his strengths, and I think he's improved. Josh McDaniels has improved his stock more than anybody in the Patriots organization in these 3 weeks. I think even more than Jimmy Garoppolo, who might be in line to make a bunch of money at some point in the coming months or years.
I just said to Doug a little while ago, you look around the league and other coaches are barely able to pull off wins with their franchise starting quarterbacks, and here's Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels getting it done 3-0 with now their third string quarterback. So it'll be interesting this game now. I mean, not only is it their second and third string quarterbacks, but they're, reportedly banged up. So I'm interested to see how this goes. And guys, as well as impressive as it was what McDaniels pulled off with Brissett under center, factor in special teams, because without them, I mean, Thursday night's game probably would have looked a little different.
Yeah, absolutely. Usually I don't pay that much attention to special teams because there's so much else going on. I know that Bill Belichick wouldn't be very happy with me about that, but I kind of skipped them as far as the film review stuff goes. But when you have 2 fumbles or 2 forced fumbles and 2 fumble recoveries on kick returns, and when you can give yourself that kind of field position, then you kind of start to understand why Belichick emphasizes special teams so much when your team has the ability to do that. It's going to be very difficult for a team to win a game when they lose 2 fumbles on kick returns, just because of the field position and everything goes along with it. So Ryan Allen was great in that game. Stephen Gostkowski was good. So yeah, I think that they deserve just as much credit as the offense or defense for that win.
Yeah, I think we all know how much Bill Belichick loves special teams. Yeah. And the Patriots, I mean, I'm not 100% positive how every NFL team's roster is constituted, but they have a lot of special teams only, or at least special teams focused players on this team. I mean, in Matthew Slater, Nate Ebner, Brandon King, Brandon Bolden plays almost exclusively special teams. And I mean, it's every year when they're trimming down the roster, it's a bit of a debate. It's how many of these guys do you want to keep that don't really contribute into the other two phases of the game? But I mean, when they have a game like this is what Bill Belichick will point to and be like, see, this is why we have these kind of guys on our team. And they were awesome. I mean, especially the two big plays, obviously, were the fumbles on the kickoffs. But Ryan Allen was fantastic. He was probably the second best player on the field, I'd say, behind Jamie Collins, who had a monster game. But yeah, I mean, when you have a limited offense, a inexperienced quarterback, you got to win in the other phases, and that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, and also on offense, Zach, you mentioned it earlier, we saw a lot of LeGarrette Blount, and probably will be seeing a lot more of him on Sunday. His production, talk about the team blocking effort, though. The offensive line did really well to let him do what he did, but also, we talked a little bit about it last week, Julian Edelman laying out a block that led to one of Blount's big runs.
Yeah, I think, like you said just there, it's a full team blocking effort. I mean, the offensive line has been much improved, I think, this year, especially in the run game. But you've got Julian Edelman, you've got the other wide receivers. You have Malcolm Mitchell laying a big block on Jacoby Brissett's run. Martellus Bennett has been great in the blocking game. So has fullback James Devlin. It's been a great. I mean, LeGarrette Blount I think he's an underrated player, but he's not good enough to have this kind of performance by himself. So it's needed to be a full team effort in the run game, and that's what they've gotten so far.
Yeah, and if anything, I'd like to see them be a little bit more consistent too, just because it's a lot of boom and bust right now in the running game. It's either LeGarrette Blount ripping off a 20 or 40 yard run, or it's definitely a lot of 1 yard runs. Yep. I mean, when you go through the game, there's negative runs, there's 0 yard runs, and there's a ton of 1 yard runs. So if they can even clean some of those up and maybe get 2 or 3 yards rather than 1 yard, then the average yards per carry goes up, then they can extend drives a little bit more. So as good as the run blocking has been and as good as Blount has been, I think there is a way for them to improve. And we might even see that when they clear up the right guard situation a little bit and either decide on Shaq Mason, which it seems like they kind of did last week, or bring in Jonathan Cooper to see what he can do once he's finally recovered from that foot injury. That it's been since July 30th that he's been dealing with that. So you've got to assume that he'll be ready at some point soon to come back and maybe solidify that offensive line even more.
Are you worried at all about Blount's workload right now? He's had injury concerns in the past. In the last couple of years, he's had the hip, he's had a couple other things, and he's carried the ball more than any other player in the league through these 3 games. Are you worried at all that he's gonna break down?
Yeah, because and like you said, he's carried the ball over. It's been over 20 times all 3 games, right?
I believe so.
And they don't really have a backup in there. You don't really want to trust Brandon Bolden to carry the ball. James White can't do what LeGarrette Blount does. DJ Foster can't. I'm still waiting for them to call up my best friend Bishop Sankey and maybe provide Blount a little bit of assistance or rest there at running back. But I kind of have the feeling that if they don't start giving him rest, then he could start breaking down a little bit. It seems like he does get hurt pretty frequently, and that's pretty normal for running backs. They take a big beating. Blount is 250 pounds, but he's still getting hit on every single play that he carries the ball, and that's pretty tough for him.
Yeah, I mean, through 3 games, their other 3 running backs, Bolden, White, and DJ Foster, have carried the ball 10 times total.
Yeah.
They've had some plays in the receiving game, and Jacoby Brissett has had a few runs.
Right.
But it's been almost exclusively LeGarrette Blount, and for a guy with that injury history, I don't know if that's a sustainable thing. But it's working for now, but we'll see
right now, too, they have to rely on him a lot. Do you think that will change when Brady's back? Maybe they'll be able to give him that rest and sort of save him for the playoff run.
I think it will, yeah. They're definitely not going to need to rely on him as much when they have a guy like Brady back. And I'm interested to see what will happen when and if Dion Lewis comes back.
Yeah.
Because we've kind of forgot that there's all the everything that's been made about the Pats not playing with their starting quarterback. They also haven't had their starting running back for the all of training camp, all the preseason, all the season so far. So, I mean, who knows where Lewis is in his recovery, but if he can come back in I believe week 7's his first, he'll be eligible to come back. If he can come back, that just adds a whole another dimension, but we're still a couple weeks away from that.
Yeah, you can almost kind of run Blount into the ground in these first 6 weeks if they are confident that Lewis can come back, because then you've got Lewis and you've got Sankey on the practice squad and you've got all these guys. So, yeah, I guess there is an element that you can kind of, like I said, run Blount into the ground early this season.
Mm-hmm.
And now 4-0 at the beginning of the season, to start out the season, seemed kind of not likely, and now here they are on the brink of it. How much will this game depend on the Patriots defense, especially now that the quarterbacks are banged up?
I think that kind of depends on who's at quarterback. If it is Jimmy Garoppolo, and if they're comfortable in starting him, if that shoulder is fine, then I think that this should probably be a pretty easy win for the Patriots. Garoppolo showed in those first 2 weeks that he can kind of carry a team. If it is Brissett, I think it's going to depend a ton on the defense, and it's also going to depend on Brissett not turning the ball over, because obviously he was good in his first start. He didn't turn the ball over. He was a game manager. But you don't really know what you're going to get out of a rookie quarterback week to week. And just because he was good in week one, in his first game, doesn't mean that the same is going to happen in his second game. So it really does kind of depend on the quarterback situation. But if it is Brissett, then the Patriots probably need a similar defensive performance that they had in week 3.
Yeah, this Bills defense was terrible last year, but they picked off Carson Palmer 4 times last week, and they do have the playmakers on that defense to confuse some quarterbacks. Especially, I think even if Garoppolo is in there, he is more experienced than Brissett, but he did make a couple ill-advised throws both in the preseason and in the regular season that could have been picked off. He's been lucky that he hasn't. None of those have actually been caught by the defenders, but either of these quarterbacks, I think they still do have to take care of the ball, because this Buffalo team is one that can take it away. They haven't showed it in most weeks, but a game like last week, they showed they can be dangerous.
Yeah. Now the Bills' offense under Anthony Lynn, new offensive coordinator, LaShawn McCoy really went off. Tyrod Taylor on the ground. How much faith do you have in the Patriots' run defense to be able to shut that down?
Well, they have to, because that's pretty much the Bills' entire offense right now. They're 32nd dead last in the NFL in passing yards. They're probably not going to have. They might not have Sammy Watkins for a second straight week. You can debate how important he is to his offense. I know that you have some thoughts on that.
Hot takes.
But yeah, they're a very run-focused team. And Anthony Lynn likes to, as Bill Belichick was talking earlier this week, he likes to throw a lot of different pulling blockers, different zone schemes, different kind of they like to mix things up front. And LaShawn McCoy, he had a down season last year, but he had a huge week against Arizona. He still can be one of the more dynamic backs in this league when he's on his game. And Tyrod Taylor obviously brings a wrinkle that most teams don't have at quarterback.
Yeah, I think that the Patriots, the main goal there is just to prevent big plays, because Patriots have been very good at limiting running backs to 2 or 3 yard carries. But then we've seen some 40-yard plays out there.
The
David Johnson run, yeah. So I think that's going to be the key here. I think the Bills LaShawn McCoy had a pretty big run in that game last week against the Cardinals too. So that's really the key there. Otherwise, they've been really solid in the run game. As far as the Bills' passing game, yeah, I think it's up for debate whether their offense is better without Sammy Watkins. I mean, they were certainly better in week 3 than they were in weeks 1 and 2. And that's because Tyrod Taylor does rely so heavily on Watkins in that offense. And when he's not in there, he's more willing to tuck the ball down and run. They're more willing to rely on LaShawn McCoy. They're more willing to rely on some of the shorter, safer passes. So, I don't know. Obviously, your offense is going to be better overall when there's a extremely talented wide receiver like Watkins in there. But I think they also need to find a little bit of a balance in relying on him too heavily and also relying on other weapons. So maybe him being out of the offense for a week will help them a little bit. But if he is back, they'll probably throw to him quite a bit. I think Tyrod likes throwing to Sammy Watkins.
Hot takes, Doug. We like hot takes
Fire!
around here.
Fire emoji.
Like it. Well, guys, I talked to Bills beat writer Vic Carucci a lot about the Bills and what he is expecting to see out of them Sunday. So here is that call.
Michaela Vernava joined on the line by Vic Carucci, Bills/NFL writer for the Buffalo News and also Sirius XM NFL radio host. Vic, thank you so much for joining us. I know there's lots going on up in Buffalo this week.
Yeah, Michaela, great to be with you again.
Now, tell me, up in Buffalo Bills country, what's it feeling like up there? Is there a sense of optimism? And I'm not talking about the fans. I mean around the Bills facilities.
Yeah, there's no question there was a great deal of, I think, urgency. I'm not sure if it was a sense of desperation. I'm not sure if it was on the brink of panic, but it felt like it was trending in that direction. After the 0-2 start, after the terrible performance against the Jets, especially on defense, and allowing Ryan Fitzpatrick to just tear him up on national TV. And then the morning after that game, the firing of the offensive coordinator who had only been on the job for literally 18 games. So that certainly didn't have a feel of stability to it when they sent Greg Roman packing and replaced him with Anthony Lynn, who had been the running backs coach, assistant head coach. And you began to wonder what was going on there. So there was for sure, something like what happened Sunday against Arizona was very much needed. Not just winning the game, but physically dominating in every phase, looking much better defensively, and then from an offensive standpoint, getting a running game going, which was non-existent for those first two games. And even though they led the league in rushing last year, LaShawn McCoy, who was a big part of that last year, looked like a new man against the Arizona Cardinals. So it changed definitely the whole atmosphere around the building.
I know I was definitely surprised to see what happened, especially against the Cardinals. And I was wondering, how much is this due to pure desperation? Because at this point, there's talk about there being jobs on the line, whether it's Rex Ryan, other coaches, football operations personnel. But how do you get players to feel that sense of desperation, aside from just the fact that, no team wants to start the season 0-3?
Yeah, there's a pride element that probably carries over the most there. I'm not entirely certain that I buy the idea that players get all that caught up into the whole coaches being fired or potentially being fired, how much that weighs on them, because I think as players, they live in the here and now, and they're very much into their own situations, right? Their concerns are, they know the lack of security in this business, and they sort of live with that. Now, I will say Rex Ryan has a way of getting players to rally for him, to be on his side and back him. And I think last year you saw it where they had gone off the rails, were missing the playoffs, and had two basically meaningless home games to play against Dallas and the Jets. And the players, with a lot of backups in the lineup at that time because of injuries and so forth, rose to the occasion. And I think in many ways they sort of showed they had their coach's back. He's a player's coach, and I think by and large the group here likes playing for him. So I think part of their thinking is, let's do what we can to keep this guy around.
Well, and we certainly saw the defense step up, as you said, and it was very interesting to see Ryan Fitzpatrick, who threw 6 interceptions against the Chiefs after no interceptions against the Bills the week before, and then the Bills defense comes out, 5 sacks on Carson Palmer, 4 interceptions, and this is against one of the best offenses in the league in the Cardinals. And a lot of this was, tell me about the turbo package that they ran on Sunday.
Yeah, it was pretty fascinating to see a radical change in how they were doing things. But this, in many ways, I think this was a stroke of genius, because they went in with the idea that, look, the Cardinals are going to try to beat you primarily throwing the football. This is what they do. This is what Carson Palmer does. So, number one, flood the secondary with coverage. So they go with 7 defensive backs. Number 2, keep linebackers, keep guys who can move well, dominating the front 7 versus linemen. So there was only one lineman on the field, and that was Kyle Williams for the most part, plugging away. And this is a 33-year-old guy, which in football years is kind of old, and he's had injury history. He was coming back from a knee injury, and he was just grinding and doing an incredible job. He got a sack. He was getting penetration. I mean, the guy just played lights out, but he was surrounded by linebackers in this grouping, and then they did sort of that muddle huddle pre-snap, very Patriot-like, where your front 7 kind of walks around before the offense gets set based on what they see, right? And that, I think, in many ways, that comes straight out of the Patriot playbook, because Rob Ryan, who is now here as assistant head coach defense, spent those years coaching linebackers for Bill Belichick, and I think tried to bring those principles into this thinking, into this game, and seeing that it was effective before. So I give the Bills a lot of credit for that, and they end up getting 4 interceptions. Palmer's first 4 of the season, all in the fourth quarter. There was a creative pressure package that also had Palmer off his mark and uncomfortable. So, yeah, as a defensive scheme, what they didn't do against the Jets, simply put, was pressure Ryan Fitzpatrick. And it was ridiculous because he just sat there with all kinds of time and worked the middle of the field to his receivers. The Bills didn't let that happen 2 games in a row.
And now after the game, I heard a lot of players talk about how the element of surprise really helped them because they hadn't run a defensive scheme like this before, so there was no tape for the Cardinals to study. How now do they proceed? Will they be able to use this scheme effectively now against the Patriots, or do you think they'll have something new up their sleeve?
My guess is it'll be something different and new. I think it's opponent-specific, what they did there. I think it was very much geared toward that kind of a quarterback. Now, of course, the biggest question the Bills will have going into this game is who is the quarterback they're going to face,
right.
and therefore what's the style and what's the approach. And I just think at first blush, I mean, knowing that it's either Jimmy Garoppolo, that it's going down Brissett or Jacoby Brissett or fill in the blank.
Julian Edelman,
right? I'm just thinking that in looking at it from a logical standpoint, it doesn't seem to me that there would be as much of a thought that you're dealing with this Carson Palmer, 36-year-old statuesque kind of guy. That really doesn't fit the profile of who's available to play quarterback, I don't think, for the Patriots. So, yes, I would expect something different, and certainly the respect and anticipation that Bill Belichick and staff have thoroughly studied and broken down exactly what the Bills did successfully against the Patriots and against the Cardinals, and the Patriots would very much know what that was all about, and then how to counter that if they do see any of that.
Now, how will the Bills, in looking at what the Patriots were able to do against the Texans, and that was a game they went into with a lot of questions with Brissett under center, the Patriots basically eliminated J.J. Watt from that game. He only had 2 tackles, no sacks. If you didn't know who he was before the game, you probably wouldn't know who he was after the game. He was such a non-factor. They really shut him down, and Watt's someone who usually tears apart rookie quarterbacks, and the Patriots' offensive line was just very effective. How will the Bills be able to look at that and try to shut that down?
Yeah, I think that was, again, a very, unique sort of approach that did eliminate Watt from the game, but also they didn't put a ton on Brissett's shoulders to try to win a game with his arm, right? I mean, I think it was his ability to move. It was a very safe game plan in many ways, and smart, perfect for what he did, and I think it was just enough to make it happen. I think defensively that was the real key is how they handled that Brock Osweiler and that Texan offense. I mean, how they just didn't let them get anything going, and I think that's the real key here is, to me, the number one plan for the Patriots is how you handle Tyrod Taylor, who beat the Cardinals with his legs, who was given the freedom to do that more so than he had been under the previous coordinator, Greg Roman, for a couple of games, who was really trying to push him to work from the pocket. And look, the Bills, that hasn't changed. The Bills don't want to see this guy get hurt. The more quarterbacks run, the more chances they get hurt. But look at what that running did with the Cardinals and kept a defense moving the whole day, worn down. They had the time change coming from Arizona. They weren't equipped physically to handle that, plus a deeper set LaShawn McCoy, which was another change in the offense. And by working deeper in the backfield, he's seeing things better up front, making his cuts, and he did a lot of downhill running, which was different than the first 2 games where he was going mostly to the edges and trying to turn. Instead, they were working him between the tackles more, using a lot of trap plays. So I think the key to the Patriots' defense is take that away, have that spy available to handle Taylor, funnel everything as much as possible inside, and do what opponents do to Tyrod Taylor. Make him play quarterback. Make him work from that pocket. And so far, I mean, I've seen the Patriots, for the most part, do that successfully.
So that said, the work that the Bills really did on the ground in this game against the Cardinals, going up against the Patriots defense is definitely going to be a challenge. If you watch them, they have been just really strong. So how will Anthony Lynn game plan for the Patriots defense?
And here's the other thing. Who does he have available to him? He did not have Sammy Watkins in that game Sunday against Arizona with the foot issue. Not sure if he's going to have him this week. I have a feeling what Sammy is dealing with, again, and recovering from off-season foot surgery. It's that fifth metatarsal break, the Jones fracture thing, that it could take some time before that's right. And maybe he has to be shut down for a while. But if he's there, or if they didn't get a lot out of their passing game Sunday, can they get more out of it to stretch? And that's really the key here. You've got to have threats. You've got to give a defense a reason to back off of dealing with quarterback running, running backs running, and I think the other key here is also getting more tight end involvement in the Bills' passing game. Charles Clay did very little. They got a play or two out of Nick O'Leary, but the big investment is in Charles Clay, and he's supposed to be the difference maker there. So we'll see how that works out.
I know there's only a one-game sample to go off at this point, but how much do you think removing Greg Roman from the equation did for the Bills' offense?
Yeah, on the one-game sampling, it will look like a stroke of genius, but that's to me tremendous overreaction. I think Greg Roman's a good coach. I think he had ideas, however, that didn't necessarily connect with the players. Not all of them. I mean, I think the O-linemen in general were happy with what he did, but I know for a fact that LaShawn McCoy, Tyrod Taylor, Sammy Watkins had an audience with the owners of the team, the Pagulas, on Friday morning, and talked with them about their concerns that they felt that the offense, as it was set up by Roman, wasn't taking best advantage of their skills. So you heard a lot of Rex Ryan saying after the firing took place, or the change took place, that they want to get the ball into the hands of the playmakers. Well, again, I don't think Greg Roman intentionally wanted to keep the ball away from playmakers or didn't know who the playmakers were, but I think the point being made was to stay more patient with the run, to do more things from a power perspective, and simplification, minimize the numbers of plays in there. I think the playbook was upwards of for a game plan, I should say, was upwards of 80 plays or so, maybe 90, and it got cut down to the 40s from what I understand for this Arizona game. So that's, I think that allows players maybe to function a lot better when they have fewer plays to think about and memorize.
Mm-hmm. And now, the Patriots, of course, there's so many questions. They're not full strength, and Tom Brady isn't leading the pack. However, that said, they are still one of the best teams in the league. Really, what would a win over the Patriots, if the Bills could pull it off on Sunday, now combined with a win over the Cardinals, that would be wins over two of the best teams in the league. What would that do for Rex Ryan?
Oh, yeah, this is the game changer of game changers for their season. This puts them right back into the discussion of a lot of the optimism. I'm not saying there was tremendous optimism going into this season, but I, for one, saw this as a playoff team just based on improvement that I thought Tyrod Taylor would make from year one to year two as a starter, improvement that the defense would make, even with as many players as were hurt, including the top two draft picks. But because they would know the scheme better, that was the scheme adjustment was a big problem last year. And I think Rob Ryan's coaching has had a lot to do with that, individually teaching players from a micro level and situational football. So I thought all those factors would work to their benefit. And if it shows up with back-to-back wins and against two of the better opponents on the schedule so far, it's huge. And it does reinforce the decision to make the coordinator change. It reinforces the decision to trust the defensive coaching that's there, because that was waning after that Jets game and after the struggles of 2015. And frankly, from a pure math standpoint, this is the more important game. I mean, if they had, of the two games they were playing these 2 weeks, the one they could afford to lose was last week against Arizona, the non-conference game, right? You beat a division opponent after you've already lost 2 conference games and 1 divisional game to the Jets. You know, now you create a bigger hole if you lose another divisional game.
So a lot on the line for the Buffalo Bills on Sunday, and of course for the Patriots. They're 3-0. No one thought they could do it without Tom Brady. They could possibly go 4-0 before he returns. A lot will be going down at Gillette Stadium on Sunday. I'm super excited. Vic, thanks for joining us. We'll see you Sunday.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks, Michaela.
Big thanks again to Vic Carucci. Always good stuff from him. And guys, now let's take a little look around the league at teams that are 3-0. I want to know who you guys think are legit. We got the Vikings, the Broncos, the Eagles, the Ravens, and the Patriots. So let's look at contenders and pretenders. Who do you think's a pretender?
I'll say the Ravens are a pretender. I'm not totally convinced on that one. Maybe Joe Flacco is back to being elite, but if he's not, then I think that probably won't last too long. Obviously, some might say the same about the Eagles because of their quarterback situation, but so far Carson Wentz has looked pretty legit. I don't think the Eagles are going to go 16-0 by any means, but I think that's probably a team to contend this season.
Yeah. Pennsylvania.
Yep.
Pennsylvania, the Wentz wagon. I love it. I do think I share some similar thoughts to Doug here. I think Wentz is going to regress a little bit once teams kind of figure him out. But I mean, I had the Eagles 31st in my Week 1 power rankings, and they're making me eat my words right now. Carson Wentz has been great. As for the Ravens, I think they're the biggest fraud 3-0 team that you'll probably ever see, given the teams that they've beaten. They've beaten 3 of the worst, if not the 3 single worst teams in the NFL. I mean, they might claw their way back to a wild card spot or something, but I don't think. Yeah,
I like
wow,
it.
There you go. See, got my bird puns on. As for the Vikings, I mean, they've kind of surprised me. They're you don't often see a team lose their franchise quarterback, running back, and left tackle.
Seriously.
And start off 3-0, but that defense they're beastly. I mean, they can be. I think Denver is maybe the only team that has a better defense than them, and it's a pretty close race there. And if Sam Bradford can continue to be serviceable or good, slightly above average, I think they could challenge. They might be the NFC North champs, given what the Packers have shown. But yeah, they're a playoff team, which is very, very surprising to me. But they're fun to watch.
How about the Broncos? Thoughts?
Nasty defense, and Trevor Siemian kind of looks like a real quarterback, which I guess is a little bit of a surprise considering most people hadn't even heard of him until a couple months ago.
Yeah. I'm still not 100% convinced on Siemian, but he was really good last week. Defense is definitely legit, and I dropped this on my appearance on the Bill Barnwell podcast this week, but there was a team in the NFL last year during the 2015 draft who not only had Trevor Siemian as a top 100 prospect, but also their 3rd-ranked quarterback in that draft. So his performance is not the biggest surprise to everyone around the league this year.
And Patriots, safe to say, contenders. Guys, Boomer Esiason predicted that they can go undefeated. It's kind of starting to really look like that may be possible because Tom Brady is coming back real soon. What do you think?
If the Patriots go 4-0 with Jimmy Garoppolo and Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, Tom Brady will do absolutely everything in his power to go 12-0 for the last stretch because he does not want anyone to think that he is the 3rd best quarterback on this team.
I mean, all I know is that I'm very excited that both of us are going to be in Cleveland for Week 5 for when Tom Brady comes back. I think it's that
I'll
game.
be there a while.
Yeah, Doug will be spending about 3 weeks in Cleveland. But I think that's going to be the game that we all thought the Colts game would be last year with the Deflategate return vengeance game. This is going to be Tom Brady coming back to prove that he is still the top dog here in Foxborough. I think he could hang 600 passing yards on the Browns.
I don't even know where he is in the world right now. I saw photos. He's maybe off jet setting with Giselle and vacationing, whatnot. Good for him. All I know is wherever he is, I can sense the restlessness from here because, what is it, like 5 minutes after the end of each game, we come out with a new edition of the TV Times on Facebook. The guy has just had no chill coming out with those fire Facebook posts.
Oh,
so,
yeah. And as for the 16-0, it's always possible with this team, especially if they start 4-0 with these quarterbacks. So I mean, obviously not likely, but hey, if any team can do it,
we will
it's
see.
this one.
Yeah, Tom Brady always staying relevant, be it on the gridiron or online.
Clothed or not.
Guys, it's been another great week on Between the Tackles. Let's get back into Gillette Stadium and get to practice and whatnot. Everyone, thanks for listening. I am your host, Michaela Vernava. You can follow me on Twitter at Michaela Nesson. It's been Zack Cox's debut on Between the Tackles. Zack, what's your Twitter handle? I actually don't know.
You don't know our Twitter handle?
Is it at Zack? Is it at Zack Cox
I'm walking out of the
I think it's at Zack Cox Nesson, but
Zack Cox Nesson, Z-A-C-K.
I thought
not
I thought maybe that was too many characters. I didn't know Zack Cox Nesson. All right, Z-A-C-K, Z-A-C-K, not H.
Nope.
No H.
No
All
H.
right, follow Zack at Zack Cox Nesson with a K, and Doug Kyed is just Doug Kyed. All right, that's it, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll be right back at you next week. Keep it on Nesson.com.